Start saying we're live now. Unfortunately, Urmila was unable to give class this morning due to being extremely busy with other projects. So I'm going to do my best to share something about Krishna consciousness. There's a little thing saying we're live on Facebook. So today's verse, Srimad Bhagavatam, chapter 3, Canto 3, chapter 27, entitled, where's the title? Anyway, text number 27. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. I'll share the screen. Wait, I was doing it just before. How did I do it? Here we go. Okay. That must have worked. You can see the screen now. Oh, wait, full screen mode's not what I want. Okay. Yatahya party buddhasya prasvapo bhavanarta brit saeva prati buddhasya navaimo haya kalpate yatahya prati buddhasya prasvapo bhavanarta brit saeva prati buddhasya navaimo haya kalpate. Word for word translation, yata, as, he, indeed, a pratibuddhasya, of one who is sleeping, prasvabaha, the dream, bahu anartha brit, bearing many inauspicious things, saha eva, that very dream, pratibuddhasya, of one who is awake, na, not, vai, certainly, mohaya, for bewildering, kalpate, is capable. Translation. In the dreaming state, one's consciousness is almost covered and one sees many inauspicious things. But when he is awakened and fully consciousness, such inauspicious things cannot bewilder him. Purport. In the condition of dreaming, when one's consciousness is almost covered, one may see many unfavorable things which cause disturbance or anxiety. But upon awakening, although he remembers what happened in the dream, he is not disturbed. Similarly, the position of self-realization or understanding one's real relationship with the Supreme Lord makes one completely satisfied, and the three modes of material nature, which are the cause of all disturbances, cannot affect him. In contaminated consciousness, one sees everything to be for his own enjoyment. But in pure consciousness, or Krishna consciousness, he sees that everything exists for the enjoyment of the supreme enjoyer. That is the difference between the dream state and wakefulness. The state of contaminated consciousness is compared to dream consciousness, and Krishna consciousness is compared to the awakened stage of life. Actually, as stated in Bhagavad Gita, the only absolute enjoyer is Krishna, one who can understand that Krishna is the proprietor of the three worlds and that he is the friend of everyone, is peaceful and independent. As long as the conditioned soul does not have this knowledge, he wants to be the enjoyer of everything. He wants to become a humanitarian or philanthropist and open hospitals and schools for his fellow human beings. This is all illusion, for one cannot benefit anyone by such material activities. If one wishes to benefit his fellow brother, he must awaken his dormant Krishna consciousness. The Krishna conscious position is that of Prati Buddha, which means pure consciousness. Amagyana tamarandasya gananjana shalakaya chakshur militam yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Narayanam Namaskrityam Naram Chaiva Narotaram Devam Saraswatam Vyasam Tatu Jayam Adirayat Shri Chaitanya Manobisham Shapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadambayam Dadati Swapadantikam Shri Krishna Chaitanya Bhavan Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shri Vasadi Gaura Bhaktivinoda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So I'll just cut and read to the Bhagavad Gita verse, which is the one Prabhupada refers to, and then I'll start speaking on these verses. So I believe this is the verse Prabhupada referred to, which is Bhagavad Gita 5:29. Bhaktaram yagyatapasam sarvalokam maheshwaram suhridam sarvabhutanam gyatvanam santam richati. A person in full consciousness of me, knowing me to be the ultimate beneficiary of all sacrifices and austerities, the supreme lord of all planets and demigods, and the benefactor and well-wisher of all living entities, attains peace from the pangs of material miseries. So this verse today is, I imagine it's probably one that people quote a bit because it gives a nice analogy that becoming Krishna conscious is comparable to waking up from a bad dream. And this analogy is nice because it's very clear, the principle that's being described. Because when we're having a bad dream, it seems like that's the reality we're in, and we can be completely terrified by the situation of the dream. But as soon as we wake up, the terror is completely gone. There's no residual fear or disturbance that's left over. That upon waking up, we're fully recovered in our consciousness. So becoming Krishna conscious is similar, that when we wake up, we become fully free from fear. There's several qualities of a pure devotee which are described in the Bhagavatam, and Rupa Goswami, or maybe it's Jiva Goswami, mentions the primary quality. I think there's two primary qualities mentioned, but one of them is free from fear. So that relates to this verse. And one of the reasons why being free from fear is such an essential quality is because fear is something that can take away our good qualities. When we have fear, then we can act selfishly. I'm still screen sharing, sorry. When we have fear, then we can act selfishly. There's that verse which people say often gets misquoted in Srimad Bhagavatam that talks about how people who aren't devotees can't have any good qualities. Urmila comments on this verse saying that one of the things it means when it says they can't have any good qualities is that their qualities don't have any permanence. So if somebody has fear, then that fear is always capable of covering over their good qualities. Whereas for the pure devotee who's free from all fear, there's nothing that can happen in this world that can cover over their good qualities. Any situation the pure devotee's in, no matter what pressures they're under or how they're squeezed, still pure Krishna conscious reactions will come out of them because they have no fear. If a conditioned soul gets to the point of fear, then they may do anything for their own selfish benefit to protect themselves or their family members. They may hurt other people. But for the pure devotee, if they get to the point of being unable to protect themselves or whatnot, they'll just put their hands in the air and take shelter of Krishna, like we see in the example of Draupadi when she was during the attempted disrobing, or like the Pandavas and all the trials and tribulations they went through. Vaisheshika Baru tells a nice story of how when we're under trying circumstances, that's when our real qualities come out. There's an American spy in Russia during the Cold War, and he could speak perfect German, perfect Russian, perfect Russian accent, and he was managed to be working in this, in the military or the government or something, so he could do his job successfully and get information back to America. But at one point he stubbed his toe or something, and when he was hurt like that, his reaction, he screamed out with an American accent, and this was how he became discovered. So and we're similar. When we're in difficult circumstances, our true qualities will come out, and that's the test of our Krishna consciousness. What we dream about at night is one test, and how we react when we're fearful is another. We have to train ourselves to take shelter of Krishna in such circumstance. So one of the main points of this verse and purport is that what waking up means is realizing that Krishna is the enjoyer and focusing our attention on pleasing Krishna. And that when we do this, we're free from illusion. We're free from, I think it's got the word moha, which is translated here as bewildering. Does it say? But when he is awakened and fully conscious, such inauspicious things cannot bewilder him. So Prabhupada adds in the purport that waking up means realizing that pleasing Krishna. Let's see if I can find that. Yeah, the difference between the dream state and wakefulness. That was the last sentence before that. In the condition of dreaming, when one's consciousness is almost covered, one may see many unfavorable things which cause disturbance or anxiety. But upon awakening, although he remembers what happened in the dream, he is not disturbed. Similarly, the position of self-realization or understanding one's real relationship with the Supreme Lord makes one completely satisfied, and the three modes of material nature, which are the cause of disturbance, cannot affect him. If I'd had time to prepare, I probably could have dug up. Actually, I can pull up those verses. I know exactly where they are. There's some verses that also describe how Krishna consciousness makes one free from the modes of material nature.
Daddy, where's this clasp of wood for the crane?
Where's the? I don't know. I think there's only one bit of rope for the crane. No, I was just asking where a toy is. Let me share my screen again. So there's this wonderful series of verses in the Srimad Bhagavatam. I'll just read the translations. Actually, it's probably good to do it with the Sanskrit. I often quote these when I give class because they're so nice. Let's start from text 15. So this is the second chapter of the first canto. Prabhupada once said that this chapter is so nice that one should memorize the entire chapter. So, with sword in hand, intelligent men cut through the binding knots of reactionary work by remembering the personality of Godhead. Therefore, who will not pay attention to his message? So that's one famous verse. And then they Sushusho Shadadanasya Vasudeva Kataruchi Shanmahat Sevaya Vipra Punyatirta Nishevana. Translation: O twice born sages, by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. By such service, one gains an affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. Shrinvatim Swakata Krishna Punyatirta. Shrinvatim Swakata Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtana Hridyantasto hyabhadrani vidunoti sahritsatam. This is one of my favorite verses from Srimad Bhagavatam, probably because I like hearing, and this one says how hearing is the ticket. Sri Krishna, the personality of Godhead, who is the Paramatma in everyone's heart and the benefactor of the truthful devotee, cleanses desires for material enjoyment from the heart of the devotee who has developed the urge to hear his messages, which are in themselves virtuous when properly heard and chanted. So the verse I'm speaking on today in the purport, it talks about becoming how Krishna consciousness awakens one from the sleeping state, and one becomes free from the vices or the disturbances of the three modes of material nature. So we're going to hear in this series of verses the process by which this happens. This is the science of Krishna consciousness. So that it starts with, what's the last one? It starts with serving those people who already have Krishna consciousness. So by serving those devotees who are completely freed from all vice, great service is done. And one gains an affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva. And then this verse talks about, now you have this affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva that you got from serving those devotees. What's the benefit of having that? So the benefit of having an affinity for hearing the messages of Vasudeva is that you can hear properly. Bhakti Vigyan Goswami gives a nice seminar on hearing, and he talks about how there's different qualities of hearing, and the quality with which we hear determines the I didn't actually start sharing, did I? Anyway, the quality with which we hear in Krishna consciousness determines the benefit that we get. So it's not just that you sit through a class and automatically get the benefit. There's different people that are getting different levels of benefit from the same class, depending on what they're doing with their attention. There's a story that's told of was it Gokarna, and I can't remember the names of the people. Anyway, it's one of those stories from ancient India, and the two brothers, and one of them lived quite sinfully and became a ghost. I might get some details wrong. I haven't told it for a while and remembered it. I think Krishnendu told it recently. One of them became a ghost, and the other one was a great reciter of Bhagavatam. And so he'd left his body, and because he was sinful, he'd become a ghost. So his brother came to know of his predicament, and they were talking, and he explained, I'll recite to you Srimad Bhagavatam, and this will free you from your difficult situation. So the ghost, he entered into a bamboo. The bamboo had 7 chambers. And he was reciting Srimad Bhagavatam. And because he was a great Bhagavatam reciter, many other people came and were hearing. But this person who was in the ghost body was hearing with greater attention. And there were 7 days of hearing. And after each day, one of the chambers of the bamboo stick would explode. And then on the 7th day, the final chamber of the bamboo stick exploded, and this person came out in a Vaikuntha form, and an airplane came with 2 Vishnu Dutas and took him back to the spiritual world. And the other people that were there listening were like, hey, we were hearing the same katha that he was hearing. How come he got benefit? I think you were giving him special mercy that you weren't giving to us. I think this is nepotism. You're favoring your family member. How come we didn't get the same benefit? And the Bhagavatam reciter explained, I was not favoring anyone. The Bhagavatam shines its mercy on all. The difference is he was in a disturbed condition of life, and he wanted to get out of that condition, and he was taking paying special attention to the Bhagavatam. He was hearing with rapt attention because of his disturbed condition of life. Whereas you guys are enjoying, and we're not focusing so well. So they decided they wanted to get the same benefit. So they did another recitation, and they all listened with greater attention and got more benefit. So this time I'm actually going to share my screen, and I'll read a few more of these verses. I got to do 3 clicks. Okay. So the next one, Srimad Bhagavatam 1-18. By regular attendance in classes on the Bhagavatam and by rendering of service to the pure devotees, that's Prabhupada's translations of service to Bhagavat. All that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed, and loving service unto the personality of Godhead, who is praised with transcendental songs, is established as an irrevocable fact. So this one is the one I had in mind. It relates directly to the verse we have from today, which says that when one is awakened and fully conscious, such inauspicious things cannot bewilder him. So this, where are we? This verse is this series of verses is quite a scientific breakdown of the process of achieving that. And then Tadara Justamo Bhava Kamaloba Dayaschaye Chaita Etir Anavidam Stitam Sattva Prasidati. As soon as irrevocable, loving service is established in the heart, the effect of nature's modes of passion and ignorance, such as lust, desire, and hankering, disappear from the heart. And then the devotee is established in goodness, and he becomes completely happy. So I thought these verses were really relevant to the verse today, because this verse talks about, in a nutshell, what happens when you become Krishna conscious, and those verses talk about how to do it. You serve advanced devotees, then you develop a taste for hearing, then you hear properly, you hear with good attention. So one way to do that is to find those devotees who inspire you, whoever that might be, provided they're well situated in Krishna consciousness, and serve them and hear from them. And when you hear from devotees who inspire you, of course, we also want to develop a mood of hearing. I never like the mood of approaching Bhagavatam where you think, oh, who's giving class? Oh, that devotee. Oh, I just won't go. Whereas I think it's nice to see the Bhagavatam as its own thing, and Vyasadeva is empowering people, and whoever's speaking could be Krishna arranging for some message, and some message can come through that person. And of course, everyone's got their own unique Krishna consciousness, which they're able to share too. It's not just some impersonal thing where Vyasadev's speaking through me. There's also our own personal realizations, but to a large extent, it is about the Bhagavatam speaking through us, or the advanced devotees using us to share a message. So when we're pleasing the devotees and we're following properly, then those the 6 Goswamis and Prabhupada and the previous acharyas, they become pleased with us and they can use us as an instrument. So I think it's not so nice to have the mood of approaching Bhagavatam of not liking to hear Bhagavatam if we don't like the speaker. We should be able to see Krishna in all sorts of situations and be able to find the honey anywhere. So I guess that's one of my moods, because I organize Bhagavatam class and I like to get a variety of speakers and get people to feel like they can have a chance and everyone's got something to share. Of course, it's not everyone's nature to give class. So back to the verse, about halfway through the purport. It's quite a short purport, but it's got a lot of nectar in it. Maybe I should move this over here so it looks like I'm looking at you when I look at the... There was another point in the verse. So yeah, he quotes Bhagavad Gita 15:29 about the peace formula. So yeah, that's the next point, that Krishna consciousness means not being interested in our own happiness, but being interested in pleasing Krishna. Modern psychology corroborates this fact. So there's been several schools of psychology that have failed in many respects. But Viktor Frankl, some of you may know of his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He wrote another book called Man's Search for Ultimate Meaning, I think. He's quite famous in psychology. He was I think a medical doctor of some variety, and he survived concentration camps during World War II. And while he was in there, he was making observations about the human condition and human psychology. And he's the one who made the now somewhat famous psychological observation that asking, what can I offer the world, is far better for mental resilience and happiness than asking, what has the world got for me? So he noticed that around Christmas time, or shortly after Christmas time, the most number of people died. And he thought, well, why would people die following Christmas time? There's nothing in the external environment that's changed following Christmas time. And he worked out that many people were thinking, what has the world got for me? This like expectation, well, what's in it for me? How can I become happy? What nice thing is going to come and tickle my senses? This kind of materialistic consciousness, this selfishness thing. They were thinking, oh, I know, I'll be home by Christmas, whether they believed in God or whatever higher power or not. They were thinking, at least I can get out of here and be home by Christmas. Christmas rolls around and they're still in the concentration camp, and then they give up all hope. And the will to live does have an impact on how long you live. So that with them losing the will to live, more of them were dying. And you notice those people who are asking the question, what can I offer the world, had a better survival rate. So he was working on a book when he got locked up in the concentration camp, and he had his manuscripts taken away at some point. At one point he was sick. He had a fever and a flu, and he was in the doctor's area of the concentration camp, which wouldn't have been anything fantastic. And he felt like he could leave his body. So what he did to maintain his will to live and his alertness was he mentally reconstructed the manuscript for his book in his head. And that gave him a purpose to strive. And he reckons if he didn't do that, if he didn't have that motivation that I have something I need to offer the world, that he wouldn't have lasted. So in Krishna consciousness, we, of course, are trying to come to this point where we give up our selfish questioning of what's in it for me, and we start to desire to serve Krishna. So there's a few more points I can talk about, and then I'll finish. So one of them, because I mentioned, trying to please Krishna, and I've talked about this in other classes, but when we're trying to please Krishna, it doesn't necessarily mean that we have to sacrifice our own nature. We can please Krishna according to our own nature, and Krishna wants us to be happy. So, and Krishna says in Bhagavad Gita that doing the work of another is sinful, and we should do our own work. And Urmila does a nice seminar that I think everyone should listen to. There's at least one condensed class that she gave on it. YouTube class, which I'll share because it's just 1 hour long. How she's elaborating on that point and talking about the varnas and doing work and service, which is according to our nature. And that's what we'll do and be happy. That's what we'll do a good job of. And that's what we'll do. And other people in the outside society will look at us and thinking, oh, these Krishna conscious people are really functional and happy. Because people doing services which are not according to the nature is dysfunctional. It may work rarely as a kind of emergency thing, but overall it's dysfunctional. We need to be doing services which are according to our nature. And then, so one final point, Prabhupada talks about philanthropy. As long as a conditioned soul does not have this knowledge, he wants to be the enjoyer of everything. He wants to become a humanitarian or philanthropist and open hospitals and schools for his fellow human beings. This is all illusion, for one cannot benefit anyone by such material activities. If one wishes to benefit his fellow brother, he must awaken his dormant Krishna consciousness. The Krishna conscious position is that Prati Buddha is that of Prati Buddha, which means pure consciousness. So I think this is a point Prabhupada makes often, and I think in some respects it's misunderstood. So the point Prabhupada's making is that if we think we're going to help people with philanthropy in the absence of Krishna consciousness, we're mistaken. If we want to really help people, then we need to share with them Krishna consciousness and ultimately awaken their dormant love of God. And without doing that, there's no real benefit offered, because the person is just going to take birth again, and who knows what condition they will appear in. You know, that there's been some philanthropy work done where some rich person sponsors a whole lot of meals for poor people which have meat in them, and of course they could have done the same thing and not included meat, and there would have been the same benefit more or less for materially the people would have been nourished the same, minus the karma. So stuff like that is silly. But the way in which this is misunderstood is saying that we shouldn't feed the poor or shouldn't do any kind of philanthropy work. When we're Krishna conscious, we can do these things, but we just have to see them with the right mood. So, for example, with ISKCON run several food for life programs, and those programs can make the society look good. They give people prasadam, and if somebody can't feed themselves, it's pretty hard for them to be interested in hearing knowledge about Krishna consciousness. First, if you're in a state of hunger, if you're starving, you can't hear Bhagavatam. You need to have if you're super advanced and you're in a state of starvation, you can hear Bhagavatam. But Parikshit Maharaj, he was hearing Bhagavatam fasting for 7 days from water and food, and the hearing of Bhagavatam relieved his hunger and thirst. But that's not everybody is on that level. So for other people, if we can, from using material things calm their mind down, then they can be ready for hearing Krishna consciousness. And if we're the ones doing it, we go out on Harinam, at least before the lockdown, we were distributing meals on Harinam every second week. And a lot of people develop a nice attitude towards the devotees as a result of that. And when they think nicely of the devotees, then there's more chance that they'll want to hear what we have to say. So this so-called material welfare work is not material when it's done for the right reasons and in the right context. So some devotees talk about this, how we can have mission drift. Mission drift means when you start out with one goal, with one mission of spreading Krishna consciousness, but then somehow that turns into like the Salvation Army, where it's like just a place for people to sell furniture cheap and distribute free meals and clothes to people who are in need, and they're not really doing much work spreading God consciousness. So we don't want that to happen to ISKCON, but we can still do those material welfare work, but we need to do it in the right way. So in ISKCON we have 4 varnas, right? Except one of those varnas is currently ignored. So Sudras are valued in ISKCON. You tell them what to do and they do it. They got a nice service attitude, wash the pot, wash these pots, or do this, or whatever service it might be. Brahmanas are obviously valued in ISKCON because our process is, hearing and chanting and deity worship, and Brahmins are all over all of that and they do a good job of it. But at one stage, Vaishyas were not accepted or respected in ISKCON, and then at one point ISKCON figured out, actually we need money. So then they started honoring Vaishyas, somebody who can do a good job of generating wealth and is willing to use it for Krishna. Those people that get all sorts of honor and respect. But currently in ISKCON, Kshatriyas don't get any respect. I mean, somebody who's a good manager might get some respect, but we don't value the services which Kshatriyas really take heart in. So a Kshatriya, a Sudra just wants, basic creature comforts, and they're happy as long as they have something to do. A Vaishya likes to produce wealth. They're happy as long as they're producing more and more wealth. This is from the material angle. Whereas a Brahmana, they just want to acquire knowledge and share knowledge. So I'm just simplifying. Whereas a Kshatriya, they want to look after people's material needs and protect dharmic principles. And, so that Kshatriya can't bear to see people going hungry or not being treated well. And so a lot of the services which will really inspire Kshatriya will be seen as mundane welfare work. But this is a varna all of its own, and it's stuff that the society actually needs. A functional society needs a number of people that are making sure everybody's fed, everybody's getting treated well, nobody's getting abused. And if we don't have that, then people might be getting abused or treated badly or go hungry and so on. So that was my last point. Was there anything else? Yeah, I think I've gone on long enough. Are there any questions? I guess questions can take a while to come in if they're coming from Facebook, or I can open the chat and restream and see. I should be able to see all the questions from there. Any questions on Zoom?
I have a question.
Yep.
You're talking about engaging our nature, and how do you reconcile that with doing what Krishna wants, how Krishna wants it as a part of surrendering?
That's a good question. So when Krishna consciousness was first started in the West, it was kind of an emergency, and Prabhupada definitely had the mood of like a military commander and soldiers, and he used lots of analogies like that. And lots of devotees did services which weren't according to the nature. And some people say you can change your nature by becoming really Krishna conscious. And we can also see that advanced devotees, it's really hard to pick them in. Like Srila Prabhupada, he was an expert manager. He was expert at personal dealings. He was a Brahmana. He was expert at translating the scriptures. You couldn't really pin him down to one thing because he's transcendental. He's a Paramahansa. He doesn't fit within the material designations. So we can become advanced devotees and become like that. But Krishna wants us to do service which is according to our nature. He says that in Bhagavad Gita. He says doing the work of another is sinful, and that we should do our own work. I don't know how to find that verse right now. Sorry, but so please, what the question is, what pleases Krishna? And the misconception is that we please Krishna by surrendering our nature. But there may be situations which that's the case. I mean, what Krishna does want us to do is surrender our conditioning. So, like we have certain things that we like or dislike that it's like, well, anyway, that's not Krishna conscious, so give it up. And, we should give up things like that. But, and of course, when we're conditioned souls, we don't actually know what our nature is. Like, I mean, depending on the degree of conditioning, if somebody's raised well with nice parents and gets a nice education, then it can be really obvious what their nature is. But if somebody goes through trauma growing up and has all this conditioning on them from not receiving the best parenting, or having teachers that were really harsh or whatever it is, then their nature can be covered over, and it can be hard to tell what's just the conditioning that resulted from their childhood and what's actually their God-given nature. So with that, being aware of that problem, we solve that by improving our psychological condition with Krishna consciousness, and sometimes we may need to take help from counseling depending on the severity of the conditioning. But supposing we have got some idea what our nature is, then we use that for Krishna. So the Kshatriya can look after Krishna's devotees and look after people in the greater society in a way that makes them attracted to Krishna. The Sudra serves somebody in one of the other varnas, so they serve a Vaishya or a Kshatriya or a Brahmana. That's pretty obvious how that can be favorable for Krishna consciousness. The Vaishya produces wealth, and that wealth gets used for Krishna. The Brahmana studies and shares knowledge. Of course, there's some Brahmanas who aren't intellectual. Urmila talks about how all Brahmanas share ideas, but some of them do it through cooking or deity worship or something like that, or music. So that not every Brahmana is highly intellectual. And also intelligence is a different thing. Somebody could be intelligent and be in any of the 4 varnas. Intelligence doesn't determine what varna somebody's in, and someone could be unintelligent and be in any of the 4 varnas too. Although perhaps, I don't know, it'd be hard to imagine an unintelligent Brahmana. But the other thing about doing service according to our nature is we need training, like even somebody who's a high level Brahmana by nature, that's their psychophysical nature. If they're covered over with conditioning, they won't be doing the world any good. We need training how to use our nature to serve Krishna. But there's all sorts of services which need to be done for Krishna. So, I like to give the example of book distribution. There's quotes that say book distribution is the highest service. And I think it's important in one respect to understand what services have what priority. So like it's described in some classes Prabhupada gave, one class on nectar devotion he was giving, he said that if there's one devotee serving the deities and a guest comes, or maybe instead of a Vaishnava comes, then the devotee should stop serving the deities, stop the arti or whatever, and go and welcome the guest. And this is more important than the deity worship. So it's important to have the correct understanding of the importance of different services. But at the same time, Krishna consciousness is a holistic thing. So we're, like our temples are not in emergency states now, or at least not in Auckland, where we need to sacrifice our nature or sacrifice the deity worship to welcome guests or so on. We can have somebody there welcoming the guests and somebody doing the arti. So then it may be somebody's nature to welcome the guests and somebody's nature to do the arti, and people can fill those roles. And society is set up in such a way that there's the right number of people with each nature to do the services. And if there's not, then, we could make some adjustment. But yeah, does that, some sort of waffling, does that answer the question?
Yes, thank you.
Let me just check if there's any questions on Facebook. No. Okay, I think I'll finish there. Yeah, so yeah, service according to our nature, if everybody was thinking, oh, book distribution is the best, and everyone went out on book distribution, this is just kind of an analogy, then like no one would cook for the deities, or no one would write books which share their realizations in a language which addresses modern audiences, and so on. So yeah, if we do service according to our nature, we'll have a complete society. Like we need people to make sure people are not getting abused. We need people to study the Shastra and speak the Shastra. We need people to produce wealth, and we need support people for all of those services that are happy as long as they've got their basic needs met and they've got something to do. Sutras are very simple, and we need people that are like that. You can't have everybody wanting to be a leader or wanting to do their own thing. You need some people that are followers that will support what other people are doing, because people in other roles need support. Yeah, so I think that's it. Thanks for tolerating my attempt at sharing some Krishna consciousness.